We are leading the way into our big stories with our news review. Sweetie, who joins the conversation?
Vicky Bright is a lawyer and entrepreneur and former legal advisor to President John Agyekum Kufuor. She's in the studio with us this morning. Good morning, beautiful.
Good morning.
How are you? I'm fantastic. And you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Okay. Benjamin Akakpo, why are you smiling so much this morning?
But
Okay.
But anyway, we'll take your quick thoughts, as always, before we get right into the papers. Any thoughts for us this morning?
Yeah, just the Pope, you know. Yeah, I think it was a weekend of a lot of sobriety and, you know, I'm not Catholic myself. I'm a Methodist and a born-again Christian. But I'd like to extend my deepest condolences to the 1.3 billion plus Catholics in the world. And I think the world has lost someone who emulated what Christianity should be about, you know, humility and love for our neighbors and caring about the poor and all the things that should matter to all of us as Christians. So I think that's the thought that's on my mind this morning.
I mean, we could go on and on about him. I was here on Saturday for the live
I watched that
broadcast. But for me, one thing that stood out, of everything you could have said about him, his humility.
Yes.
You know, he never took his salary.
Really?
Yeah, so even if he needed a shoe or something.
The whole time?
Yeah, I hear he was
Wow.
apportioned about 340,000 euros a year. But he never took, he never drew on his salary. Always, you know,
And
trying
chose
to keep
to
things
live in the
silly simple.
You know, not in the whole people.
Not in the people palace,
exactly.
but in the different, in the guest
Exactly.
house.
Carried his own food every day and all the rest of it. So
I mean, we all could learn something.
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
I was going to tempt you,
Yeah.
my apologies. I was going to tempt you with something because I don't see it in the papers yet.
What's that?
You know, the Ghana Bar Association and
Yes.
and everything in between. So some of it I have found interesting. I hear there's a bit of a rift between the lawyers about should we push for this? Should we not? Should we petition? Should we not? What do you think?
Well, look, I think we are in the middle of a constitutional process. So one should be a bit circumspect about what to, you know, agitate about and what not to agitate about. And I haven't seen, apparently they intend to actually send a petition to the president. So it will be interesting to see the contents of that petition. But if the argument is that in their view a prima facie case has not been established, then it begs the question as to what the function of the Council of State is. I mean, they are the ones constitutionally mandated. Nobody is pretending that Article 146 is perfect. It does need to be reviewed and amended, and we need more clarity in its operation. For example, there has to be some minimum threshold to determine what a prima facie case is.
Indeed.
So in the natural, I guess what we have now is just the natural sense of the word and the natural meaning of it. And the natural meaning of it is that, look, on the face of it, is there something to be looked into, to be investigated further? And I think the answer to that is yes, if what we are reading is indeed what is in the petition. So let's see.
Which some people may say does not suffice, but like you're saying, on the face of it, are there questions to be answered? Someone would say yes, someone would say yes.
Someone would say yes, and that's, you know, therein lies the problem. If we had some kind of guideline or a set of guidelines to say, look, if this and that are involved, then yes, you have to go this way, and if not, then you have to go that way, then it would be more objective. But at the moment, it's a judgment call on right-thinking members of society. So we just have to respect
and
the
maybe
process.
my final take on this. It's interesting that it's coming mid-process. I mean, it's constitutional.
Yes.
It's been triggered.
Yes.
It is going on mid-process about whether it should be in camera or not, whether there should be an option. That doesn't exist in the Constitution. It states clearly what the process should be like. My interest, though, is this coming up at this time. I don't disagree that 146 may need some changes and other clauses in our Constitution. But I also wonder, the Ghana Bar Association, when other people have been in this same position, not necessarily the Chief Justice. Because if you go back to the history of the GBA, they were pretty vocal, not just on matters but matters of the law. When other people had, for good reason, I don't want to mention names, have been in the same position, Article 71 office holders, I've not heard them say anything. Is it just because this is the Chief Justice this time? I don't know. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, this is the problem. If you're going to behave or act in a certain way, then you have to be consistent, so that questions like this are not raised. And in, if you do that, then every time you come out to speak, everybody sits up. So,
if it came down to it, would you support the call for the proceedings to be open for the public to follow publicly?
It's something that I haven't really kind of thought about deeply enough.
Okay.
To speak about publicly. Okay. I need to reflect on
it more. All right.
Some say it could open a can of worms.
Yes.
Well,
others say it could ensure fairness, but you see, the tricky bit is it could go either way.
Yes, it's a real test of our democracy and how we navigate these waters to determine how successful we'll be in the near future.
Yes. And the thing is, when you have it out in public, it becomes like a show, Everybody's tuning in and watching and commenting, and, everybody's comment, and it can get a little bit ugly.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump right into the newspapers. I have the Daily Graphic. On the front page, Boko conflict is national wound. Let's treat it with urgency. That is the EUW Chancellor saying. Over 50,000 teachers receive promotions. Ken Ejapong urges amnesty for former party members. IMF chief praises Ghana's latest economic reform efforts. And I have let's do the Daily Graphic in 2 rounds. The first round, let's talk about the Boko conflict as a national wound briefly. And let's talk about Lumumba calling for overhaul of education towards New Africa. The renowned Pan-Africanist Professor Patrice Lumumba has called for a relook at Africa's educational system to ensure it builds a mentally conscious population ready to accelerate the development of the continent. They say there's no free lunch, but I think as I'm growing, the better I understand what that means. The education system we have now was inherited from our colonial masters. It is imperative that we relook at it and create something that, meets us as Africans at the point of our needs, not just continuing what they handed down to us. There's a reason they gave us this particular system. It's not the same as what they use up there. Let me just pause here and then add the 2 stories and we can discuss. NPP invites proposals for constitutional amendment, and the opposition New Patriotic Party has opened its doors to members and identifiable groups to make inputs into the party's constitutional amendment. And the party quotes, the party looks forward to receiving from its members proposals for constitutional reforms, adoption of which will result in the NPP having a revised constitution. So, if you have any ideas to share, they're welcoming it. CDD Ghana leads regional push to address foreign influence. And I'll end here. The Ghana Center for Democratic Development has established an international desk as part of efforts to monitor foreign influence and enhance Africa's voice in shaping global policy. Vicky, where should we start from? They're saying Boko is a national wound and we should treat it with urgency. Sometimes when I think about Boko, I wonder what will happen if the media, I'm not trying to be mischievous, but I wonder what will happen if we stop giving it media attention. What do you think would happen?
I think if it's not kept in the limelight, people may disassociate themselves from it. I think it is important. It is a national wound.
Yeah.
It hurts all of us. You know, one Ghanaian dies, that's one of our own.
Yeah.
And every single life is important. So, and it's important for us to live in harmony, as harmoniously as possible. We're all Ghanaians, and we are not really as tribalistic as some of our neighbors. And I think that's one of the strengths of this country. So we have to keep Boko in the news until it's resolved. And I'm an optimist. I'm the glass is half full kind of person. So I would really love to believe that one day, and hopefully very soon, it will be resolved, at least in a way if not permanently, in a way that brings harmony and civility and avoids all these unnecessary deaths
right.
and damage to people's properties.
And on the call to overhaul Africa's education system, that call from Patrice Lumumba.
I totally agree with that. We're so far behind, and it's not helping us. It really isn't helping us. It is something that we have inherited, and, you know, I remember when I, you know, went outside to study. I went to Wesley Girls High School.
Okay.
And I left. I started lower six and then left, and, you know, did the rest outside after the 81 coup. And when I got to my new school, I actually realized that I couldn't think. And that was a shock to me.
You couldn't think?
I couldn't think in the way that critical thinking, you know, that's what I mean. And I didn't actually realize that until I got there, because our education system is very formulaic. You chew, pour, pass, and forget. And of course,
rote learning.
Absolutely. And we all become brilliant at it. We collect our A's and 2-1s and first-class degrees and whatever. But critical thinking should really be the backbone of our system. And I think it should start right from the very early ages. Yes, we say that if you put it in Google now, is there critical thinking in Ghana? It will say yes, but actually there really isn't, to the extent that it needs to be. And the example that I just gave you is not just me. I have friends who were like, oh, wow, yes, that happened to me too. So, I mean, we need to have a problem-solving approach to education so that we are encouraged to examine things, to think through problems and issues, to arrive at conclusions, rather than being told. In fact, some teachers don't even encourage you to ask questions. And they are very upset, especially in the younger, you know, the lower years of education. If you ask a question, they get very offended.
They think you're challenging them.
They think you're challenging them. And, you know, so I totally agree with it. We need to do it. And in fact, one of my children, when we first moved back home, had the same problem in school, because one teacher was saying a tomato was a vegetable, and he was saying no, it's a fruit. And you know, he had just come from England. He was like, no, it's a fruit, and he was punished because he kept insisting that it was not a vegetable. So we need to encourage children to challenge us. Look, in my law firm, I encourage the junior lawyers to challenge us. You know, like, what do you think about this? And so we need to foster more of that kind of thinking in our education to help us, because that's where the whole world is going. People are inventing things. People are doing huge things, and you know.
Perhaps if we adopted that approach, critical thinking, we wouldn't be so afraid of artificial intelligence, because then we find new innovative ways of solving the problems without saying that you copied it from the internet or something.
Yes.
I was privileged to help out in my auntie's school. She uses a different module, not the Ghana system. It's like a Montessori. They call it balanced literacy. And as young as 4 or 5, they're teaching these children critical thinking, problem-solving skills in mathematics,
fantastic.
Ghanaians, you know, the average Ghanaian child in a Ghanaian school does not have such opportunities, you know. So I understand what you're saying. Ben?
I mean, this thing you're saying, I've heard so many times. And you see, it's not that those people, look how you turned out. It's not that those people are not able. In fact, a lot of them will then tell you that when they adapted to that system, whether in the UK, the US, France, or other countries, then they shot up to become the best in their class. A lot of the time.
Yes.
I don't know what
that's what happened to me.
You see?
That's
a lot of the
exactly
time they'll tell you that,
me.
but the foundation was just rote. So they had to add the other bit about, you know, a sophisticated global way of thinking, so that you're not half-baked. You're not just, chew, pour, pass, forget. There's more to you, critical, you know, analysis. There's a gentleman who worked around here. He's ended up in some, if I mentioned the part of the country, people would know so. But he went through a similar phase in his master's program. Now he's sorry. So there is some problem, because I've also schooled elsewhere, and it is true that here it's too rote. And if you do anything apart from, in fact, university here, there are some lecturers, if you don't regurgitate exactly what they've given you,
they will fail you.
Exactly. If you fall out of it, if you've done some research from somewhere, come and add it, you're in trouble.
Forget it, yes.
So that kind of thinking is a major problem because then you don't even encourage people to read around and to challenge you. It's all about give me what I gave you. And how does anyone improve it?
Yeah, and it also does not bring the best out of you. No. I mean, I had a cousin, sadly of blessed memory now, but when he was here, you know, he went to a disco and all of that. When he was here, he wasn't really doing as well. And then he moved to the US. In fact, everybody, the whole family was a bit worried about him, you know, as far as his academics and things were. He was fine, but he was just a bit, you know, he just didn't conform to this whole formulaic way of doing things. In the end, the guy, you know, he graduated with a law and MBA combined degree from one of the best universities in the US. So that's, if he had stayed here, he wouldn't have done, So
we agree with what Patrice Lumumba is saying. We need to really look at it. And let's stay on the education bit for a second, because there's another story here about over 50,000 teachers receiving promotions. Up to 50,458 teachers out of the total 54,227 teachers who were successful in last year's aptitude test have been promoted, the Ghana National Association of Teachers has confirmed. What exactly goes into that aptitude test? I mean, it's good news that over 50,000 teachers are receiving promotions, but I'm tempted to say to what end? Yeah. Okay, so let me add one more story and then we can continue the conversation. Did you want to say something about NPP's invites for proposals? Or should I just add Kennedy Japon's call for amnesty to that story, and then we can look at the NPP as a whole? So MP for Aguna West, no, the story doesn't start here. I think it was talking about all those who had left the party, including Alan Shermanting and Cynthia Morrison should all be, should come back to the party. Do you think that that's what happened? Okay, the story is here, just a little bit of details in it. A leading member of the opposition New Patriotic Party, Ken Ohene Japon, has urged the party's leadership to grant a general amnesty to all party members who were dismissed or who left the party due to internal strife as part of the party's rebuilding exercise. And he's saying that if they don't do this, they will not win election 2028. So it's critical in their quest for winning back power in 2028. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I agree with that, but I mean, they need to do more than just that. But I do agree with that sentiment. Look, NPP, this is a time for deep humility and deep reflection. For it ought to be, anyway, by NPP. And there are too many levels of disconnection in the party. And so, you know, unity is always a good thing. And this is a call from one member of the party. It's not like a call from the party. So it's somebody's thinking, even though, albeit a leading member of the party. So it's not really MPP calling. It's one leading member of the party calling for it. So I think there's a distinction between that.
Yeah.
And for me, the levels of disconnection are, as I said, mainly two. Amongst the party members themselves, leadership and the members, and then with Ghanaians, you know, with Ghanaians. So whatever they can do to fix their own internal wranglings, I mean, in fact, you have to start from your home before you can. If you can't influence your own people internally, then certainly you can't influence, 15 million odd voters.
Do you think Dr. Bawumia's honesty, and he was saying that the reason that they failed in 2024 is because of high cost of living and e-levy? And many people have said that. He mentioned a number of things.
Arrogance of power.
But I'm just, many Ghanaians are saying that that's honesty that's unexpected from, well, it's unusual for someone to come out and say that indeed e-levy, high cost of living, you were in power. I mean, do you think that does anything to help them save face?
I mean, I think it's good that he said it, but really I'm not sure it will have any impact because, as you said, he had a front row seat in government. You know, so if you have a front row seat in government and you are the number 2 citizen and you're an economist, and for which reason
the economic whiz kid who was
exactly,
brought into,
then it's a little bit self-serving to say that. But you know, it's a good thing that is said.
Perhaps it's upon somber reflections. Now looking at the things from outside of power, perhaps it's giving him a fresh perspective on what the reality is. I remember last year, I kept saying to myself that perhaps our leaders are operating a different reality from ours. You know, they kept saying that the economy is doing well, but it wasn't reflecting in, you know, the ordinary Ghanaians' pockets. They kept saying something, and then we were calling it gaslighting. So maybe, just maybe, it's because now that he's not in power, he's able to see things for what they really are.
Yeah, and if that's the case, it's fantastic. I mean, it's good. Because reflection is always a good thing. And, you know, I have a good friend who always says that there's nobody more sober and more friendly than a politician that's out of power. So, and I've found that to be
We need to put that on a coat card. Yeah.
Or maybe trying to get to power.
Because when you're out, they're like, oh, you know, model citizens, very nice, very accessible.
Yeah.
Forgetting that they kept someone waiting for 3 hours and walked straight past them saying, no, I'm going to Jubilee House, when the president hasn't called them at all.
You know something I find interesting?
So.
Even now, there are people, currently, there are people who tell me, oh, there were these politicians we used to speak to. Once they assume power, once they've got certain ministerial or other positions, they line on fire. You know, and when they want power, they'll come. You've seen people with spatula, banku, and they'll bring you there, they'll eat with you, they'll play cards with you.
Yeah.
Once they secure that power, friendship, yamutu.
And I just don't understand that whole mindset, because the same people will be there when it's over. I mean, power is not forever. You know, it's finite. Yes, so they'll get to, definitely. You will be out of power at some point. If you're not lucky, you'll even be reshuffled before the 4 years. So the maximum period you have at any given point in time is 4 years. So is it really worth antagonizing people? And I mean, I'm glad to say that I wasn't like that.
Yeah.
You know, the same friends I had are the same friends I have, and others I picked along the way. And I think it's all about character, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Who you are is who you are.
Kathleen Addy said, sorry, Ben, I just want to say,
go ahead.
He said that politicians think in 4 years. And every time stuff like this come up, I just go back to that statement, because indeed, they're thinking 4 years, election. It's never development, long term, like the next decade or two. What is the legacy? What are we doing right now that could possibly come back and bite us in the backside? Over to you.
It's interesting on the back of the Dr. Bawumia bit, because I reflect on, one, I have read Dennis Miracles Abuaji say that, you know, the former vice president was never in support of the e-levy. I mean, I cannot sit here, I don't know, but that's what he said. He was the main spokesperson for the campaign. So what if that were the case? He says the former president was never in support of the e-levy. So some of the things too may have been done. He didn't want it, but the system had to implement it. You remember the Kenoforiata saga. On the back of his latest comments, though, Dr. Manibuama, the defense minister, has said Dr. Bawumia is blaming everyone but himself. And in fact, Paul Grebwachidankwa, who was their spokesperson for security and governance, he also says blaming others for the NPP's defeat is not accountability. How do you digest all of this? I mean, differing opinions, different thoughts, different angles.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. I mean, look, you have to accept some blame, because as I said, he had a front row seat. So you have to accept some blame. I do agree, though, that when you're in power, it's not all decisions by the executive that all members of the executive agree with. But there is something called collective cabinet responsibility.
Yeah.
So I think you can't, once the decision is taken, whether it's a majority decision, whether someone is doing it by diktat or whatever, once you all keep quiet and rally behind it, you have to just do the honorable thing and just accept that this is a decision of the government, you know. So
don't change the pronoun, it's we, not
we.
they.
It's we, exactly. It's collective responsibility.
Okay. Just one last story, and I'm done with the Daily Graphic. From cells to cultivation, adopting Traore's prison labor model to revitalize Ghana's economy. And I like it's actually an editorial, but I like what it's saying here. So Ghana stands at a crossroads, investing $1,200 annually into sustaining each prisoner, while grappling with soaring youth unemployment and a staggering $2.5 billion food import bill. Yet, buried within its prison walls lies an untapped economic force. And I think that juxtaposing this with what Ibrahim Traore is doing, quote, he says, from today, our prisoners will be working in our agricultural sector while their sentences are reduced. Our laws must represent African values. And the African believes in redemption, I think. And that's what I believe he's trying to say here. You work for the land, we reduce your sentence. Probably, if you turn a new leaf, you can be reintegrated into society. And then we don't have to spend so much money in prisons and lives just being wasted over there. That's the last story I have in.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, actually.
Should we be adopting it?
It's not a bad thing. Yes, I think there's some argument in favor of that, because prison should be about punishment and about rehabilitation. So it should serve two purposes. Otherwise, we are failing as a society. And so, yes, the person is being punished, but if they can gain some skills, if they can also contribute to the economy and start feeling like they are not quote unquote worthless, that they have some value, I think, yeah, there's definitely
something in there.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, a human being, I always go back to that saying, every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. So you can never say, there are those who commit heinous crimes like some of these mass shootings in the US and others. Yeah. For those, you may be a bit more cautious, unless maybe over time they have displayed certain. But for some of those, we often throw in prison for stealing this and that. Those ones, I mean, if you could give them some skills, it makes sense. In fact, I don't know whether Brazil is still running that program, but they had a program where prisoners had to read books. And if they could read a book and do a proper analysis of it, and there would be an interview and they could speak about the contents of the book, they would reduce their sentence by a few days or something. So depending on how many books you could read in a year, you could reduce. And do you know what that was doing for them mentally?
Yes.
Stimulating their minds, how it would broaden their horizon.
Very good one.
Brazil had that. I don't know whether they still do, but
all we do here is to let them clean our gutters and weed around. It's not enough. I don't think it's enough. That's human resource that could put to good use. Let's celebrate Ghana's under-15 girls because they won the CAF Africa.
See, I'm always rooting for the girls. But the boys
they won the CAF Africa Schools Football Championship. Congratulations to them. This is a big win for the country. We should be celebrating them. Of course, President John Dramani Mahama was there presenting the trophy to the winning team. Congratulations. That's it for the Daily Graphic.
Go girls.
Go girls. Should we get into your paper next?
Sure, yeah. So the first, I have the custodian, and Bawumia salutes NPP polling station executives and foot soldiers, and Kodia cites arrogance of power and internal bickering. And then 4 parties to hit the streets over CJ suspension. The News Center, IMF chief praises Dr. Forson for economic reform efforts. Okoye report findings revealed. Revoked Tokonu suspension, GBA. And then the political parties demonstrating again against the suspension. And then Ghana feed. NDC has prepared petitioners for the removal of the EC boss. Nanabi alleges. Bawumia, we had a solid record of achievements, but not everything went right. And then Bawumia hailing the polling station executives and grassroots of the party again. Chancellor of UEW appeals for peace in Boko.
Yeah.
Those are the headlines that I have.
Maybe let's do them one by one. Any stories you'd like to get into from the news center?
Yes.
So you started with the news center, right?
Starting with
This is. Get into any story from there before you go to the other papers.
Yes. Let me see what I'd like to. I think the same. Yeah, because we've already talked about the Bawumia story, arrogance of power, So maybe we should look at some of the other papers. And Boku here, IMF chief praises forcing for economic reform.
Okoye report findings.
Okoye report findings.
That's an
maybe
interesting one. Yeah,
we can talk about that.
A bit of the details, and then we can discuss.
Yes. So it's a very long one, so I'll just read the actual headings, main headings of the findings, which are about maybe 10 or so. Crushing economic hardship, e-levy, unpaid workers, timing of the fuel price hike, consequences of ignored warnings, internal disunity and public infighting, neglect of grassroots members, National Cathedral, and then the unsatisfactory anti-Galamsey fight. Religion and ethnicity didn't cause defeat, he said. So I think those were the main findings, really.
In fact, we heard Bawumia say the same thing, that he's a Muslim and he beats, who was it he was comparing himself to? I think Reverend Ntim Fojo.
Yes.
He said he did better than him, even though he's a reverend minister and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, those are the things we already talked about.
Yes. So, yes, I mean, these things definitely did contribute to the monumental defeat of NPP. And the unsatisfactory Galamsey fight, that was a big thing, especially when we learned that some political figures were involved in facilitating these things and just didn't care what anybody thought. You know, so e-levy, big thing. On the one hand, you say you are encouraging a digital economy. On the other hand, you're making it difficult. So it made it difficult for the ordinary person to use Momo. It was expensive. And expensive not just on one end, but every time you send the money, you keep paying. So the cumulative effect of it was quite crushing on Ghanaians. We have several fuel price increments and crushing economic hardship. And I think crushing is the word. People were really suffering. It affected people's standard of living. It affected, people were choosing whether to eat just one meal a day so their children could eat. Even the content of the food, totally not very nutritious. People were leaving their cars at home to take public transport because they just couldn't afford to fuel the cars. So people generally felt their standard of living go down, deteriorate quite severely. Yeah. And sometimes you wondered how people actually lived. I remember one guy was being interviewed and he said he had 6 children and he said, what do? You know this whole famous quack, quack, quack. I wake up in the morning and I just do quack, quack, quack because he had 6 children to feed. Yeah. Plus himself and his wife, that's 8 mouths to feed. And so he had to do his quack, quack, quack.
Do you think it's improved a little bit? I mean, I know it's still early days, but the IMF is praising Dr. Forson for
they are projecting, that's the other story here. They are projecting a 4% increase in, improvement in GDP, which will be phenomenal if we are able to achieve that against the backdrop of what's happening globally, generally. So
I don't know how often you interact with, ordinary people, but do you get a sense that the situation has changed? I mean, coming from where, some of the findings from the reports, the high cost of living and all that, do you think it's changed in any way at all?
Yeah, I do interact with everybody. I'm a very accessible person. Okay. I talk to market women, to everybody, taxi drivers. Okay. I just do that. Sometimes I just, go out and chat to people. That's nice. Just to have an idea of what's going on. And they are always very pleasantly surprised when I stop by to chat, So, yes, people are hopeful. Okay. Let's put it that way. It is early days, but there's hope. And that's one thing that we lost under the previous administration. I remember talking to young people and you would look in their eyes and there'll be no hope there. And that was a very painful thing to observe. As a mother, that was a very painful thing to observe. So what I'm actually quite buoyant about is the fact that there's now the restoration of that hope, So the rest of it will depend on the government, whether they are able to sustain that hope, or whether gradually it fades away. But I'm hopeful that they will do their best to sustain it.
Okay.
Are you similarly hopeful? The only bit I wanted to tackle there was Galamsey. You mentioned that the unsatisfactory fight back then.
Yes.
Do you find it satisfactory now or more satisfactory now?
I would say that they are seemingly, they are being, from what we can see, they are being relentless. They've changed, you know, the major changes that the IGP made, the fact that it's back in the news every day again. We have all these documentaries by Rastas, and it's staying in the news. And I also have to commend the media for that, because it is an existential threat. I think we all agree on that. Nobody wants to be importing water in 12 years or whatever. And so it started well, but the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So it started well. As long as greed does not set in, we should be okay.
Yeah.
You know.
Another thing I find interesting is usually, well, let me just say, from the time that I started observing the political dispensation and how we do our politics really in this country, you see the launching of these initiatives at the tail end of the administration. We're seeing it earlier in this administration. I know this week alone, they're going to launch 3 initiatives. There's the Ejumara, there's feeding, school something feeding program. There are a number of them. I don't remember them all as I said right now. Yeah. Is that something to commend? You know, compared to the previous administrations where we are seeing launching initiatives at the tail end of the administration. And now this is like, we're still in the first year of this, this administration, and we are seeing a lot of initiatives being launched. We haven't yet clocked the 120 days even. Is that something that's something for the hope that you talk about?
Yes, I think so, because if it's launched at the beginning of the administration, it means that the government means business. They know that there's 4 years to judge them by.
Yeah.
If you do it towards the end, then there's no record to be judged. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
To be judged by. So I mean, that it's good that it's launched at the beginning, and let's see it being rolled out and see how it pans out. But if all these initiatives work out, then I think it will be really good.
That's it for me.
So I'm looking at those 3 initiatives now. Ejumara, Mahama Cares, National Apprenticeship Programs. That's another thing sometimes that I look at. What's in a name? And I've said it here before. Sometimes we come and we just change names and tweak and twist and turn here and there. But hopefully we get what we're looking for.
Yes.
The last time we had a conversation on One Village, One Dam. And it was mind-blowing, the sort of, because the initial projection was that it would cost about, 200,000 Ghana cedis for one. In some instances, per research and a report, it ended up being even upwards of 600,000 Ghana cedis. Multiply that by the 426 dams we're supposed to construct, and practically none of them is alive, so to speak, today.
Total
Imagine that's over 200, close to 300 million Ghana cedis.
Imagine what we can do
so sometimes,
with that. Yes, imagine what we can do with that. But I'm very passionate about the Mahama Cares. That's the sanitary pads for.
No.
Which one is this?
It's I think a medical aid for something.
Oh, the free.
Yeah, the free.
The kidney.
Kidney and the rest.
Yes, I am passionate about that. But I'm also passionate about the free sanitary towels for young ladies. You know.
Yeah, I saw a comment, and I like going through social media comments, because sometimes they are the ones who are, experiencing things maybe that I don't see, And they're saying that we chastised the previous administration for free SHS. And you're comparing school fees with sanitary pads. So there was actually a video. He was holding one sanitary pad and said, "Weigh 17 cedis into weighing school fees." And I must say, what do you make of that? That comparison.
It's not about the cost. It's about dignity. And what price can you place on dignity? I'm a girl. I'm a woman, and I mean, girls at that age are going through so much, and some of them it's about dignity, it's about, affecting their education, because this is something you have no control over. Every month it shows up. And if you're then forced to be at home for 3 to 5 days in that month, every single month, I mean, cumulatively, you're missing a lot of education hours. Yeah. So it's complicated reasoning, let me put it that way.
Okay.
To just look at it in that simplistic way. It's more than that.
Yeah.
It's about dignity.
If I may just add to it, I mean, I've read reports as well talking about the percentages. Girls across the country who would not go to school around that period, the loss of contact hours, the huge numbers who would not go to school when it's that time of the month because they simply don't have what it takes. But it's not only that. I think sometimes we lose track of the fact that governance is a continuum. Solving our problems, like in education, is a continuum. And it's not just about one thing. So free SHS, I have always said, is a wonderful thing. It's the implementation that was, in some cases, piss poor. So think about it this way. You have free education. Burkina Faso is doing something along those lines now. That is one step. You have good food because you can't study well if you are not getting proper nutrition. If you're a girl and it's that time of the month and you don't have the right hygiene materials, you have, imagine putting all of them together, regardless of administration, NPP, NDC, but you come, you do some, you add. If we put them together, then you have that quality of life.
Absolutely.
You get it? But we tend to always, I did this one, I did that one. And we are so, they say proper leadership, when you are able to do stuff and not care who gets the credit.
Yes.
That is leadership. Unfortunately, our politicians, I zip my mouth before I say
because, I mean, in all reality, who's really going to be against free education for kids? Who really in their right thinking mind? Nobody is against it. It's in the how. Yeah, nobody is against that.
Ben, we have a few
let's
minutes.
quickly do these stories as well. The Ghanaian Times newspaper, localizing natural resources exploration management framework out soon. That's according to President Mahama. Grant amnesty to dismissed aggrieved NPP members. Kennedy Japan says so. I've heard talk in the past of, Alan Chemating and whatever, and some members of his movement for change said, we don't even want to come back. But, I mean, the party will definitely, the NPP will need a rebuild, a reboot.
Yes.
To be able to, get back to its glory days. Because where it's fallen now, that's quite a fall. But you also cannot, on the back of that, assume, because take yourself back to what? 2016, when now President Mahama lost and the gap, 800,000 thereabouts, people felt, that was unprecedented. There's no coming back from that now. He clawed back 4 years later, and in 2024, he got the gong again. I'm not saying that will necessarily be the tale. There are different people and different strokes for different folks, but they would need quite a lot to come back. Ghana to use FLECT license by June 30, first in Africa. That's according to the Lands Minister. Philanthropist donates 200,000 Ghana cedis to Akosombo Dam flood victims. It's been a while since we spoke about that. In sports, Karim Zito chalks first win for Kotoko. And then Ghana under-15 girls crowned champions of 2025 African Schools Football Championship. I keep saying, Ghana, if you look at it critically, our women, our girls have been winning more laurels for us than the boys and the men. And yet, sometimes, I remember the club championships, where was it Hazaka's ladies, or one of those, I've forgotten. I think it may have been Hazaka's ladies. They went placed second and all of that, promises made and all that. Why do we do this? Because if the male side is not doing that well, we invest so much money in them. The female side, with the little we invest in them, they do a lot. Why can't we do more for them? So, Honorable Sports Minister Kofi Adams, among others, I think this is something you ought to be looking at. Incentivizing women's football, women's sports more. Because every now and then, the women will go and win laurels for us. And the men, I'm not saying they are bad, but can we have some parity in what benefits we give them and all of that? I think it's something that's really lacking.
And the men also earn more money.
All of that is in there. All of that is in there.
For me, that's the most important bit.
Yeah.
It's the money, because the effort is the same.
Yeah.
And if they're making
more money, losing, and
this, I have to tie it to, so one of my learned professor friends, a former vice chancellor, sent this to me, and I don't know why he wants me to blaspheme. I mean, how can I be a fan of Manchester United and he's telling me to give plaudits to Liverpool. You know, we are arch enemies in football, but I'm still going to go ahead and do it. So congratulations to Liverpool. They say you never walk alone, eh, Prof? You and your team, you did it even before the season has ended. Congratulations to Liverpool, but Manchester United, we are the true Reds. We'll come back for you guys. We'll come back for you. So I think I'll just do one or two stories, the framework, and then Kennedy Ejapong's bit, and then we'll call it a wrap for the Ghanaian Times. So I'll go to page 12 before I come back to page 10. So the government in the next few months will develop an indigenous framework to manage natural resources exploration in the country, President Mahama has announced. This comes on the back of the government's decision not to renew Goldfields Damang Mines deal following the expiration of its 30-year lease. I heard there was a one-year thing. Speaking at a 4-day ministerial retreat in Adan on Thursday, President Mahama stressed the need for local participation in the managing of the country's natural resources to avoid capital flight. In President Mahama's view, such interventions are necessary to raise resources to develop mining communities and areas. I've always wondered why we do not ensure that we have more of a stake in critical aspects of our national life, including in telecommunications. Yes, we look at the AT thing and how it turned out, including in mining. Because when these outfits comes, let's face it, you have to be fair to them. They're also investing a lot of resources in the mining, and some things may not necessarily pan out. Billions and billions of dollars. Yes. So they will also want the lion's share. Are we also committed? Are we willing to invest more so that we can also get more? That's a part of the conversation. I'll wrap with the amnesty. A leading member of the NPP, Mr. Kennedy Ejapong, has made a passionate appeal to the party's leadership to grant amnesty to all party members who were dismissed or left due to a number of internal grievances as part of the rebuilding exercise. Your reactions to these two stories?
Yes, no, the framework to manage the natural resources, I think with the Damang mine, they concluded with a 12-month
1 year.
Yeah, contract to, bring in some kind of transition. So that smooth transition, to ensure smooth transition back to the country. You're right when you say that there's a lot of investment that's put. I mean, mining is not for the faint-hearted. The rewards are huge, but then the upfront commitment is also, and ongoing, to be honest, commitments are also very, very high. And so they do, if the government is going to take over, then it's important that they think it through and not just rush into it. Capital flight, I think that's a very big thing in all these things. But at the same time, if someone has brought their money from outside, and especially a lot of these companies are listed in their own countries or on other foreign stock exchanges. So you have to, be able to repatriate some of the funds. The question is about the proportions. Is Ghana getting a fair deal? And often I don't think we feel that, not that we feel, we don't actually benefit as much as we should do. If we are the #1 gold producing country or close to it, then it should reflect in our economy, but it doesn't. So it doesn't, and then you also have all the things that we've just been talking about, Galamsey and all that off the back of it. Although of course that is more for the smaller scale miners, not the big boys. So I think yes, it will be interesting to see the details of the framework that they come up with, and to see whether it actually does what it's supposed to do, which is to manage not just Goldfields but anything else that falls within all our natural resources as a nation. So I think that's...
Any thoughts?
No, it's gone.
Okay. So I don't always agree with his thinking, but we must celebrate our own, and this is a moment of pride as well. Minority Leader, I'm talking about Alexander Afenyomarkin, heads ECOWAS Parliament delegation to Parliamentary Dialogue Fora in Morocco. They say a win is a win. So the Minority Leader in Parliament, Alexander Kwamina Afenyomarkin, has led the ECOWAS Parliament delegation to the Trans-Montana and South-South Parliamentary Dialogue Fora in Casablanca and Rabat, Morocco, respectively. The forum, founded in 1986, is a globally recognized Swiss international non-governmental organization known for convening high-level government and business leaders to address critical economic, social, political, and security issues. Congratulations to him. We hope we get the boons of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, yes, congratulations to him. But for me, all these, some of these organizations, they talk too much, you know. It's all about talking, and, you know, delegations and talking. We are forever talking in Africa. So let's see what comes out of it. Because if this thing has been going on all these years, then why are we, you know, talking about all these big issues
sometimes when you put it
Africa?
in tree, it sounds even...
Yeah.
That's how we did and the cracker.
Exactly, and considerably. So let's hope that this time something comes out of it other than just the razzmatazz and all the, you know, the aura and all the tricks and people's per diems, and, you know, I'm really tired of all that stuff. I really
We love it though. I think Ghanaians love the talk shop.
We do.
When you open, I mean, all radio stations this morning, the people are calling and giving you
mediocrity. We celebrate, yes.
Yeah, we like it. I did want to say on the amnesty, on the NPP bit, that never say never. On Kennedy, what's his name? Alan Sherman saying coming back.
Oh, right.
I think never say never, you know.
I mean, this is what, his second time?
Yeah.
And Kufuor, after he went and came back once. This is his second.
That was where I was getting to. So never say never. Perhaps they would put aside their Fafranto and join the new enjoy Kukudu.
Or maybe then it will not be a monarch butterfly, it will be a monarch elephant.
Well,
except that this time he's gone ahead and formed another party.
Well,
so other people are relying on him. So it's not just about him, is it? Because before it was just him. Now it's him plus all the people who have followed him. So, you know, we'll see.
Foreign Ministry rolls out new chip-embedded passport today. A new chip-embedded polycarbonate passport with unique security features is to enhance border security, reduce identity fraud, and streamline international travels for Ghanaians, being rolled out by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I hear that is happening today. And then the Ghanaian publisher, Arrogance Cost of Living sank NPP. That's according to Bawumia. Students endorse Obri Ejay as Ghana School of Law SRC president. 4 parties to demonstrate against CJ's suspension. Afeku fires up Tescon to lead NPP's comeback, and huge attendance at second Ofie Market Day. Samuel Oku pledges loans, extension services. I've always celebrated this bit, the Ofie Market, and let's see just briefly on that. So it says, even a sudden afternoon rain couldn't dampen the vibrant spirit at Amanokrom on Saturday, April 26, 2025, as the second edition of the Ofie Market unfolded with even greater success than the first. Farmers, traders, and eager buyers braved the showers under colorful umbrellas, determined to seize the opportunities the market had come to represent. And I'm saying that if more MPs did this in their localities, it probably would be helpful. Just like the whole Kweu, you know, kind of thing. You know what it does for the economy of Kweu within those few days? It's monstrous.
It's monstrous. Yeah, it can sustain some people for, you know, maybe half of the year. But with this passport thing, does that mean that, I mean, obviously current passports are all still valid. And is it that are we going to all be asked to come and replace our passports at some point, or are they going to wait for the expiry of everyone's passport and then the new one will be this new one?
I quote him here when he says, we are integrating our online passport application payments and appointment booking. And then he says what? Passport application tracking system had been linked to the NIA, would be introduced to keep applicants informed about the progress. Okay, I don't see the exact bit here, but I don't think it's going to be a recall of, just like with the black, what we called the black passport back then, the navy one, phased into the biometric one. So maybe once you get past this phase, then you go for the
I was thinking about the whole Ghana card thing, you know. There's a hint that we'll have to all go back and nobody wants to do that, to be honest.
Since we're ending in a bit, and there's someone in the studio who'll be doing push-ups for us in a bit, but chaotic 40th birthday to Esther Jima Tete of M Praise Incorporated. God honor and favor you exceptionally all the days of your life. Cheers. And that's Esther Jima Tete. A chaotic birthday to you. It's from all of us here at the Multimedia Group, especially Sami Odame and crew. Would you like to see some push-ups this morning, Sweetie Abochi?
Yes, I would. Right after I celebrate Mabel, one of Should I call her an executive assistant at Girl Get Up Africa? Mabel, yesterday was your birthday. I love you. I celebrate you. I'll get you ice cream when I see you.